Time for meditation, so I invite you to get comfortable in your chair. Take some deep breaths in and out. Center your energy and yourselves into this perfect time and space. Tell your mind there's no place you have to be, nothing that you have to do, but just be present here. So if you're comfortable, close your eyes and allow your physical self to just be present in the body. With your eyes closed, you can't see anything on the outer. Breathing in that beautiful breath of God, and breathing out anything that no longer serves. We are the presence and the power of God in this moment. And this day we choose to see things rightly, to perceive things rightly. As we move into this talk today about acceptance, there's something in your life that you are resisting. There is something that is presenting itself to you that you don't like, and you're wishing it would go away. And so this day, we choose to see that differently. In this moment, I want you to bring that situation into your mind's eye. You know how it makes you feel. Makes you feel a little uncomfortable because you don't like it, right? And so now we're going to take that situation into our prayer time together, because we acknowledge that no matter the appearance, God is in the middle of all things. That's our principle one. There is no spot where God is not. So whatever it is that is bringing itself to you, there is something you're going to learn, because you came into earth school to have experiences. And so we just pray knowing that God is in the midst of it with us. And because we have all of the inherent abilities of God within us, those 12 powers, we are divine. We are human, but we are also divine, 100%. And so we choose to see it not as an obstacle, but something that we're here to learn. And so in that energy, we move into our third principle. Where do we put our energy? Where do we put our focus? Are we focusing on what we don't want, or are we bringing light into it and seeing it as, oh, I wonder what this is about, right? That's our power of creativity, to be able to see things rightly and change our reaction to anything that comes to us. And so as we pray about it, and as we meditate on solutions for how we're going to take the next steps, as we open to the divine in us, we get answers. We know what to do. We know that we can move through anything at any time, because the universe has our back, is here to support us in every form and fashion. And so we let go, don't we? We let go of expectations of things not being good, and we choose to see it resolved, see it on the other side, see it as whole and complete and wonderful. See it as you would like to experience it. And now principle 5 is we take that intuition, that guidance that we got in prayer and meditation, and we take those steps and we move forward. So I invite you in a period of silence right now to see yourself, seeing it differently, to see yourself having a different outcome than what your fear in your mind wants to give you, the chatter. So see it now in a few moments of silence. As Tim just sang in that beautiful song, we are the way of God. We are not fear. We are not helpless. We are not victims. We are powerful, powerful expressions of God in this manifestation, come here to be the lights that this world needs. And so we claim that presence and that power of God in us to move us through whatever it is that we face. And we know it. We know it and we claim it and we accept it and we thank God for these challenges that come into our lives because we're growing. We're growing in spirit. We're growing in confidence. We're gaining more Christ consciousness every day that we use our teachings. And so we say thank you for this time of remembrance, of going back and seeing how it can be. And now we bring our focus back into the room. And we say thank you, indwelling Spirit, for this sweet time of remembering how precious and special we are and how blessed. And so it is. Amen. Whenever you're ready, just open your beautiful eyes. Thank you, Tim. Creating a practice of acceptance. So most of you know that I have been celebrating this whole week a milestone birthday. A major milestone birthday. And you know what happens when you enter a new decade? You start reviewing, like, where you've been, what you've been doing, what could you do better in the next decade, right? It's just a good time to, reflect because you're starting a new thing, right? So I'm working on this talk title, and I'm thinking, creating a practice of gratitude, that's not the talk. The talk is creating a practice of acceptance. Anyway, we're working on acceptance today. We'll be grateful that we have an acceptance talk because that's what we're talking about. So what I did in my reflection was I realized that my biggest growth period of my entire life was those years that I witnessed my husband's healing journey. 42 years, and of that, especially I'm thinking about the 5 in Texas, I wanted so much to fix him and make him better that I resisted. This is what this is about. This is what this is all about. I resisted the diagnosis, and I carried him all these places, and I was just desperate for him to stay. That might not have been what his soul was traveling, right? But that's what I wanted. And so it took me like 2 years for some Unity minister to come up to me and say, you know, what if it's not his soul's choice? What if you're trying to force him to stay and he's really on his way out? And so I learned many lessons. We journeyed that together for a long time, 5 years in Texas and then another year. Then we had 16 wonderful years, and then we came here. We had another year of illness. And so by this time, I got to the point where I realized it's not happening to me. It's happening to him. I am simply witnessing his healing journey, right? It's a very different thing when you know that you're a witness to somebody else's unfolding. It's very, very different. And so we know that resistance is what causes our suffering, but we do it anyway because we don't like it. We want to change it, right? And that's how I was until someone kind of opened my eyes. And so today, our theme and our affirmation, we are working on open to the divine. So this whole year, we're working on all of these pieces of this life wheel. And so we are working on what happens to us when we're open to the divine. How does that help us to impact the community? Because when we're in resistance, we can't be in acceptance. And when we're in resistance, we can't be in love, can we? They're just not the same. So open to the divine means we're tuned in, tapped in, listening to spirit and listening to guidance and doing what is ours to do. So our affirmation, let's say it together. I am the love of God in expression. I let God's love guide, direct, and inspire me. And so what I wanted to do today was I wanted to show you a Unity video that just became known to me that sort of highlights what we're talking about today. We are divine, right? We say that every Sunday. Every challenge builds my personal power, my personal strength. If everything was hunky-dory all the time, if we were always in bliss, how would we learn any lessons, right? Things have to come up to help us grow. And granted, we don't like some of the things that come up to help us grow. We want to push them away, but it's the resistance that causes the suffering. And so to me, to be aware of our divinity is to claim it, to feel it, to know who you are, to know that you're the divine, to know that you have the presence and the power of God in you every moment. Isn't this part of our unity principles? Isn't this what Jesus was trying to teach us? He said, you can do all of these things and more. So we know that we have that. But we forget, don't we? We sometimes just forget. It's like we fall asleep. We forget we have tools in our toolbox. We forget how precious and special and powerful we are. Because we want to belong, don't we? Part of it is we want to belong. We want to be part of something. And so this week I ran across a quote by Brene Brown. I just love her work. She says, the truth is, belonging starts with self-acceptance. Your level of belonging, in fact, can never be greater than your level of self-acceptance, because believing that you're enough is what gives you the courage to be authentic, to be vulnerable, and to be imperfect. Isn't that true? We have to be authentic. So it always starts with us. It's always an inside job. We have to work on our own self-acceptance, because if we don't have acceptance in our lives, we're not moving through as easily. Life is hard. It's more complicated. So our challenge is that we have a tendency to resist anything that comes up that we don't like. And then guess what? We create a story, and then the mind chatter begins. We bring up the chatter to support the story, to add to the drama of what is unfolding, right? And we build it, and we build it, and we build it, and we tell our friends about it, and we get all these people involved in it, and it just mushrooms. Because guess what? You're using principle 3, what you focus on. What you focus on expands. And so now what? Now you have suffering. You have suffering because you've made a whole drama out of this thing that is really only here to teach you something, right? So that's why we need an acceptance practice, because we have a tendency to grab onto things and complain and whine and carry on about it, and it really doesn't help anyone. And besides, nobody wants to be around you when you're like that, in that kind of an energy. So this is when our acceptance practice really comes in handy. But first we have to understand what acceptance is not. And it is not being a doormat. It's not giving away your power to everything. It is not that. It is not that at all. It's about focusing on solutions. It's about moving into action. The actual power is to move past the suffering and quickly into positive action steps. Things that are going to help us deal with the situation. You see, change isn't painful, but the resistance to it is. The resistance that we feel is what holds us back, because feelings come and feelings go. And when bad stuff happens, we're going to have feelings. We're going to have feelings that are sad. Maybe there's a loss or something in our family. So we're going to have sad feelings. It's not like you have to stuff that down. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about recognizing it, acknowledging it, moving through it, looking for the gift, looking for what good is going to come from it, you see. It's looking for the solutions to get us to what? The next best feeling place. Because when we're in that vibration of resistance and all that, things come to us because of the law of attraction. We'll get more of that. That's principle 3. We'll get more of that. So we want to raise our vibration. So how do we get to the next best feeling? Remember, we're not our feelings. We are much bigger and much more than that. We're just experiencing emotions. So be open to it. It's a big difference in perception when you're thinking about it. But this is our practice. We are the observers of what is going on in our lives. We're much bigger than the feelings and the emotions. So we can learn to trust that God is in the midst of it and that all is working for our highest good. That's part of principle 1 too. So I want to take you in scriptures today, and you know we always metaphysically interpret our scriptures. We're in Romans 12, verse 2. You're very familiar with this. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Right? We're renewed. We're renewed because we're tapped in, tuned in, and we know what the divine will of God for us is when we're doing our meditation and our prayer practices. We know what we're supposed to do. This practice not only keeps us humble with our prayers, but we also receive light and we receive confidence. I remember when I first got into Unity and the licensed Unity teachers, I was taking classes, and they would say, you know, you have to focus on it. You have to focus on what you want. You have to see it. You have to believe it. You have to claim it. You have to know it's yours, you know. And when I started using these principles and they worked, I was like, oh my God, this stuff works. Because we're using the dominion of our mind to create the life that we want. We're not sitting back going, oh my God, I can't believe this has happened to me again. You know, that is not the energy you want to be in, right? So we gain Christ consciousness, and then that begins the renewing of our mind. That's how we change things. We change our minds, our thoughts first, and then everything else will follow. But if you don't like your life, if you don't like things that are going on, there's some stinking thinking going on, right? Yeah. So when your mind is renewed, you are quickened. You are able to discern what is yours to do. There's no doubt. You are certain because you are tuned in and tapped in, and you know, and you're listening, and you're paying attention. And when we're in this place of consciousness, we not only have self-acceptance, but we are accepting of others as well, and of situations as they come to us. Many people can tell you that had they not moved into acceptance, they would never have made it into recovery. It is one of the cornerstones, right, of the 12 steps. They would have never, they will tell you that, and even anybody in Al-Anon who's witnessed that whole situation will tell you that it is the acceptance. Else they could have never experienced what the 12 steps offer them. Now, reaching and maintaining that is not necessarily simple, but once that resisting has stopped, surrender occurs, doesn't it? And then we're allowing ourselves to be guided by a higher power. We're turning it over, right? Sometimes we have to act as if, we have to pretend. We have to act as if. We have to lighten up a little bit. You know, we can take our stuff pretty seriously. But we will grow through it, and we'll find our way to serenity, because guess what? We get to choose, don't we? You choose to be in the drama, or you can choose to have a beautiful life, right? It's all how you want to look at it. So Dr. Tebow, he had a lot to do with the AA, and he had this to say: acceptance appears to be a state of mind in which the individual accepts rather than rejects or resists. He is able to take things in, to go along with, to cooperate, and to be receptive. That's the true meaning of acceptance to me. It doesn't mean passiveness, you see. Acceptance is an active, he said, thoughtful and deliberate state of mind. I just think it goes so perfectly along with our unity principles. We always say, let go and let God, don't we? Don't we always say that? Like, don't be stuck in your stuff. Let it go. Because that stuff is only weighing you down, making you heavy, right? We got to let go, and we got to let God. The perfect prayer that they use in AA is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Isn't that a perfect way to let go and let God? So I ran across this wonderful book, this new author, new to me, Valerie Kaur. And she wrote this book that's entitled See No Stranger. And I want to read to you what she says, what that means. Seeing no stranger begins in wonder. It is to look upon the face of anyone and choose to say, you are a part of me that I don't know yet. Wonder is the wellspring for love. Who we wonder about determines whose stories we hear and whose pain and joy we share. Those we grieve with, those we sit with, And those we weep with are ultimately those we organize with and advocate for, right? When a critical mass of people come together to wonder about one another, grieve with one another, we begin to build the solidarity needed for collective liberation and transformation. A solidarity, she said, that's rooted in love. I so agree with her take on things. She's a magnificent woman. She's a wife and a mother. She's a renowned Sikh activist. She's a filmmaker, and she's a civil rights lawyer. So she knows what she's talking about. She's had some life experiences. She's experienced resistance in her life. What is our work? How can we really make a positive impact in our community? I would suggest the next time that we're faced with something we don't like, we pause. We take a breath. Before we react or go to that negative place, let's just remember how powerful we are. And go to that place of mindfulness and try to see things differently. Try to pick how you want this to unfold. Try to look for solutions before you react in a negative way. Spend your time the way you want to spend your time. Choose it wisely. What kind of emotions you want to have and what kind of energy you want to place there. You want to let go of resistance, and you want to allow things to unfold the way they're supposed to. So this week we finished up that wonderful Living Untethered book by Michael Singer, and we went through all 202 pages of it. It was yummy. We chewed on it for weeks. And it was great. We learned a lot. So we're on this last page, and we're talking about, that we have to finish this book. We're moving into another one. And one of our students, the wise woman Wendy, said, if you go back to the first page of the first chapter, Michael Singer tells us what we need to know. So here we've done 202 pages, and back on the first page, it says, to fly, we must fully embrace the law of gravity, not deny its existence. The same is true in the spiritual realm. Teachings such as surrender, acceptance, and non-resistance form the basis of a deeply spiritual life. And that, folks, that's really the truth. All right, enough preaching. Time for a joke. If I don't tell a joke, they tell me afterwards. Why didn't you tell a joke? So, okay. So there's these little boys, and they're at their very first wedding. They've never been to a wedding before. And so after the wedding, the one boy comes up to his cousin, and he says, so how many women can a man marry? And the little boy in a split second says, 16. And his cousin is curious. He said, wow, how did you come up with that number? And he said, oh, it's really easy. It's simple, he said. Didn't you hear what the bishop said? 4 better, 4 worse, 4 richer, 4 poor. All right, guys. You got a few more to go, right? I want to close today. There was a poem in Valerie Kaur's book, See No Stranger, that I absolutely love. So I'm closing with this today. It's written by Sri Guru Granth Sahib. It says, I have forgotten my envy of others. Since I found my sacred company, I see no enemy. I see no stranger. All of us belong to each other. What the divine does, I accept as good. I have received this wisdom from the holy. The one pervades all. Gazing upon the one beholding the one, Nanak blossoms forth in happiness. Nanak is the very first guru in Sikhism. Don't you love that? And that's the way it really should be. Namaste, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. So now we get to give from our good back into this sweet spiritual community. So I invite you to take your offerings and tithes in your hands, or if you give online already, there's a little card for you to put in the basket that says you give online. Those of you that are watching on Zoom, welcome everybody that's on Zoom. Hello, hello. Thank you for hitting the PayPal button or going to the Breeze website. We are grateful. So let's bless our gifts together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, that this is so. Thank you.